for a time, he would be back. As a matter of fact, Jesus would encounter Satan several times during his ministry, mostly during healings, not to be tempted like this, though. But there was another time when he will return and he will tempt. And that's in the Garden of Gethsemane, when he has one last shot to get Jesus to turn away from the will of his Father. Jesus was led by the Spirit into the desert, the Scriptures tell us. We all wonder why. Why did the Holy Spirit lead him out there? St. Augustine says it's for our benefit. It's for our benefit that he be tempted. It's for our benefit that he be tempted to the same things we're tempted toward. And it's to our benefit that he resisted and said no, and showed us how we too can stand and say no to temptation. Temptation is not a sin. Jesus was tempted many times and resisted all of them. Our temptations become sins when we choose them and hold them dear to us. Then they become sinful thoughts, words, or deeds, or omissions on our part. He ate nothing during those 40 days. Interesting, we're entering 40 days of Lent, and the church gives us every year the same gospel of the temptations of Jesus. It's supposed to help us focus. Jesus is tempted basically to three things. And they are the same three things that we're tempted toward, if you lump all of our sinfulness together: pleasure, power, and possessions. It's true. There's nothing wrong with pleasure, power, and possessions. Of themselves, they're quite neutral. Actually, they're all needed and welcome. Our problem is they take over, or we allow them to take over. You have, if you follow the capital sin sort of thing, our pleasures sometimes turn to lust. They sometimes turn to gluttony. They turn us away from a choice of God or about God's way of living. At least they distract us from God, even if we don't sin in those particular ways. At least they turn us away from looking at Him or looking at His way, because we yield to the desire that we have for pleasure, which is good in itself. 7 days of creation, 6 working, 1 resting. Pleasure, hopefully. Hopefully we take it and use it well. But sometimes that overwhelming desire in us for pleasure takes over. And who doesn't like power? Probably not too many aspirations in this room today for power like presidency or something like that, especially when you hear Satan say that that's his domain, power is. Kind of scary in that way. But we don't maybe go that far, but we like power. Pride sits right at the top of it. doesn't it? We all like to control, and boy, do we like to control our own lives. And again, that's something we're supposed to do. You're supposed to learn. The reason your parents controlled the daylights out of you when you were a kid was so you'd learn how to control yourself as an adult. We call it self-control. But we like to exceed those limits of self-control, don't we? Not only controlling my own life is what I often say about my best friend always says this, but it's true. I don't want to be God, not even in my own life. I just want to be his first advisor. And I dearly hope he'll listen to me and my plan. Right? Isn't that what we do? Isn't that how we are? My way. We like that power. We like that control. Sometimes people really like it over other people, even to the point where it becomes very damaging in families and in relationships. Too much of it. Pride, envy. Boy, those are big. Jealousy of others. Those are big things in us, and they dwell in us. Possessions are good. There's nothing wrong with having possessions. We're supposed to have possessions. God gave us dominion over all the earth and told us to use it well. God told us to have possessions, and when we have whole bunches, we're supposed to share. More you have, the more you share. More you have, the more you help others. That's his rule. It's not against it at all. Boy, is it easy to be possessed by our possessions. Greed is a funny vice, an odd sort of vice. We think it belongs only to the rich. It's not true. The poor can be more greedy than rich people are. If we're consumed by our possessions or lack of our possessions, we're in greed. But if we take what we're given, the blessings we're given, and how we use those blessings, and when we increase them and when we share them with others less fortunate than us, then those possessions have become a blessing. But when they consume me, no. It's hard for us to identify our sinfulness. And I think these temptations are meant to do that for us. Help us know where we need to work and what we need to face. There's a more subtle thing going on here, though, too. And it's just as important for us and for the life of Jesus. Jesus has just come from the Jordan, where he's been baptized by his cousin John. Jesus, at that moment, if you remember the baptism, there's a great theophany. The Father is there, the Son is there, the Holy Spirit is there. They're all present. That voice comes from heaven to Jesus. You are my beloved Son. In you I am well pleased. What a great line. In you I am well pleased. You are my Son, my beloved Son. The early fathers of the church believed, and we believe it yet today, that at the moment of at that great theophany, Jesus understood where his life was going. He understood that his Father was going to ask him to redeem us. You, me, save us. That his Father was going to ask that of him, and that it wasn't going to be pretty. That it was going to hurt, that it would be costly, that he would pay a price to ransom us. And the Spirit takes him out into the desert to be tempted by Satan. When Satan says, take possessions, take power, take pleasure, and make them into a god for yourself, what he's saying to Jesus is, turn away from what your Father is asking of you. Why pay a terrible price for them? They're not worth it. That's you and me. That's the temptation for Jesus. Don't do this. How do I know that? Because he comes back again in the Garden of Gethsemane and tries one last time to get him to walk away from this redemption thing. Don't save them. They're not worth it. You're not worth it. I'm not worth it. And Jesus makes a choice and a decision twice, probably many times in between. He chooses you and he chooses me instead of himself. And that is what we call love.